Good afternoon, children. Last time we had started with pollination as our new topic under lesson number 2, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. I had given you some homework to be done last time, and I hope you all have done it. The diagram of a mature embryo sac, difference table between geitonogamy and xenogamy, and the advantages and disadvantages of self and cross pollination. Now, before we move further with our new topic for today, let us see comparatively which pollination is the type that nature prefers by various devices. If we talk about the advantages of self-pollination, then this is more of a surer method because there are no chances of failure. Purity of the race is maintained. Flowers shouldn't be like very large and showy, so it's very economical in the part of plant, it saves energy, and scent and nectar are not required to be produced as a compulsory part. Then at the same time there are disadvantages. It continuously results in weaker progeny or the new generation of plants, and resistance to various diseases, they decrease, right? Now let us see which is the other type and the advantages and disadvantages. Like for example, advantages of cross pollination. This pollination is the one where formation of new individuals are there with new characteristics. Then offsprings produced have healthier seeds and a better yield. This is called as hybrid vigor. This is a very important term for multiple choice question in various competitive exams, children. Hybrid vigor, right? It is like an increased capacity of the offsprings producing better yield and much healthier seeds. And also the cross-pollination results in disease resistant and high yielding varieties. We also call as abbreviated part as HYVs of many economically important plants. Then further to move, the cross-pollination enables the plants to adapt to new environment. It is utilized for developing new kinds of vegetables and fruits, which is of economical value. And disadvantages are that this is usually uncertain. The pollination may not be always successful. It may lead to some undesirable character or loss of some important character, and not economical because a lot of energy and food material have to be used to bring about the pollination. For example, the plants need to be large, flowers need to be large and showy, attractive, nectar, etc. Right? So what I am trying to tell you is that certainly you saw, looking at the advantages and disadvantages of self, at the same time cross-pollination, there are various reasons that nature should favor cross-pollination, and this is exactly what happens. That's what are related to new topic today. What is adaptations or contrivances to enhance cross-pollination? That is, if I brief you out with the tabulated part, then here, if you see the adaptations or contrivances that favor or ensure cross-pollination, we have 6 side headings. First, unisexuality, also called dicliny. Second, dichogamy. Third, heterostyly. Fourth, hercogamy. Fifth, prepotency. And sixth is the self-sterility or self-incompatibility. Let us see one by one and the other with examples. Unisexuality. See, the nature wants the plants to adapt the method of cross-pollination. So if the flowers are born bisexual, obviously there are chances of self-pollination. So what nature does is that more of the plants that are with flowering plants, the flowers will be born unisexuality. This is also called as dicliny, and plants are of 2 types, monoecious and dioecious. So what are monoecious plants? Which bear both male and female flowers on the same plant, right? So here pumpkin, maize, cucumber, castor, these are the important examples. Dioecious at the same time. Now if I just draw you in a very brief layout, then monoecious means in one plant one flower is male where the other is female. That is, Though they are unisexual, fine, but they will be born on the same plant. But dioecious mean one plant will be having only the male flowers, whereas the other of the same, that is, suppose it is let's say papaya, then in that case this will be male on one and female on the other. So this is what we mean by dioecious, saying that these plants, generally these are you can see them in papaya, etc., cannabis, mulberry, date palm, etc. So what we mean to say that these plants, male and female, they are present on separate, male and female flowers are present on separate plants. Then coming to the second method, what we say as dichogamy. Dicho means different, right? And gamy means obviously marriage, but here it means different timings of maturation, right? So this is again of two types. Like what happens, dichogamy means both the reproductive parts, they mature at different time. Anthers and stigma in a bisexual, they are present, correct, but they will be maturing at different times. If protandry, pro means first and andry means androecium, the male part. If the male is mature first and the female is still immature, then there is no case of self-pollination which is possible. And this is what we call as protandry, that is the early maturation of anther and delayed maturation of gynoecium, right? That is the female part. Then salvia, sunflower, cotton, etc. Protogyny is just the opposite. Proto means first, but here gynoecium is ready, that is stigmas mature first, but anthers are not yet mature, and this is seen in Mirabilis jalapa, also called 4 o'clock plant, the banyan tree, people, etc. The third example, heterostyly. Hetero means different and styly means different lengths of stamen and styles. Like in this case, there are two possibilities. I'll show you a picture first, then you should understand better. Look at this. These are two flowers. In one, you can see stigma style is taller or longer than what is the filament of the anther. Look at the other. This is just the opposite. The style is shorter than the filament. So which case do we have more chances of self-pollination? Guess it, A or B? Yes, you're right, it is B. Here there will be more chances of self-pollination because the pollen may fall by gravity and the plant or the flower would be pollinated. But here there are lesser chances because the filament will not, the anther will not be releasing the pollen usually against gravity. So there are lesser chances. Though it can be, cannot be just denied, but the chances are fewer. So let us see how these different heights or lengths of anther, that is filament and styles, they are there. Under this, as we said, heterostyly, there are of two types. Diheterostyly, also called dimorphic heterostyly, and triheterostyly, also called trimorphic heterostyly. Under this, we'll understand by these two terms, pin-eyed flowers and thrum-eyed flowers. Pin-eyed means, look at this, this is the same thing what is being described. The stigma stands much taller because the style is very tall as compared to the filament of the anther. In other ways, long style with short stamens. Such a condition is called pin-eyed. Similarly, just the opposite, if I say short style with long stamens, this will be called as thrum-eyed. Example, jasmine, primrose, scientifically called as primula, etc. So these are the three conditions we've done, right? Coming to again the last of the third condition, as we said, triheterostyly or trimorphic heterostyly. Under this, plants bear three types of bisexual flowers with different lengths of style. Look at the picture first. Here, this is triheterostyly. If you see, there are three types of flowers: the short, mid or medium, and the long ones. So here you can see the bisexual flowers are of three types with three different heights of styles and the filaments of the anthers. Look at them, how they can probably pollinate. The arrows, they tell the longer ones, they have more chances of fertilizing the stigma. From here it may reach here, from here it may reach. Look at the medium ones, they can be obviously mutually pollinated here to here and look at the shorter ones to the variety. So such flowers or such plants which bear 3 types of flowers, such plants will be called as trimorphic or showing triheterostyly. So I'm sure you understood this. Coming to the fourth kind of contrivance or an obstacle in self-pollination is hercogamy. Hercogamy means a physical barrier. Like suppose this is a flower, we can say in hercogamy. Suppose this is a flower and both stigma and anthers, they have matured at the same time. Suppose this is the stigma, right? And this is the anther which is ready at the same time of development. Now, obviously there are chances of self-pollination. In that case, what will happen, children, that the pollination can be brought out easily, but the flower develops a physical barrier. As you can see, the stigma gets covered by a hood or a lid or a covering or a pocket or by various other methods. So this structural barrier, what we understand, is called as hercogamy. How is it seen and where? Example, pansy is a flower where a flap can be seen, something like this, right? When the pollen grains are released, then the flap opens and then this is cross-pollinated by some other flower. Then in Kalima, there are pockets of corolla, and in Salvia, there are perfect lever mechanism can be seen for such examples, right? There are many more examples. Coming to the fifth method, what we call as prepotency. Prepotency means that pollen grains from some other flower grows faster than the pollen grains of their own flower. This is very strange, that the growth difference of timing, as seen in apple and grapes, that is very clearly indicating that only and only cross-pollination can be possible, because whatever pollen is coming from outside will pollinate faster or will grow faster than their own pollen grains, right? Then finally, the last into this contrivance or obstacle, we talk about self-sterility, and this is when we say pollens of the same flower in a bisexual flower, they fail to grow on the stigma. Right? Reasons may be internal. They could be anything that is the reason inside the flower, that their own stamens will never mature onto the same stigma. Right? They'll never grow as pollen tube. Example, potato, tobacco, and various crucifers. Right? So what you have seen in these 6 examples and the 6 categories, children, with various side headings, they all the same hint the very common thing. What is a common message that these methods are going to give? That nature is favoring cross-pollination and discouraging self-pollination, right? Because of advantages and disadvantages that we have seen just now. Alright, so let us see, when we talk about cross-pollination, then we have various types of agents of cross-pollination. Let us see about each of them, right? Agents or agencies of pollination. Self-pollination will not require any agent, but cross-pollination is what is depending on these agents. Broadly, they are of 2 types. Abiotic means the non-living factors and the biotic means the living factors. What comes under abiotic? Wind pollination, also called anemophily. Anemos means wind and phily means to love. That is a likeness towards the wind. Water pollination, also called hydrophily, right? Under this we have 2 further types, epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. We'll be talking about them just now in detail, right? Then coming to examples, wind pollination, we have cannabis. In Hindi we also call it as bhang, maize, right? And urtica. Urtica is a very interesting plant where it shows gunpowder mechanism, or we'll discuss later just now. Then coming under biotic forms of pollination, the various methods. Entomophily, entomos means insect, so this is insect pollination. For example, plants like rose, sunflower, hollyhock. Now you must understand, all these plants are the most beautiful flowers, right, in the world, because they have to be large, attractive, scented, and with nectar production to attract insects who have poor eyesight, right, or poor vision. Coming to ornithophily, which is pollination by birds, agave, bombax, which is also called red silk cotton, and bignonia, right? Chiropterophily means pollination by bats, or the mammal which is bat, the flying mammal, kadam, Adansonia, etc. Malacophily which means pollination by snail, cobra plant, then arum lilies, etc. And anthropophily, which means by human beings. Example, date palm is a very ancient experimental plant where this has been successfully seen. Alright, to move further just now with the characteristics of each type of pollination, we'll take the help of our book and many things that I like to show you with the diagram. First, we have characteristics of wind pollinated plants or flowers. Let's see. First and foremost, suppose there's a plant which is pollinated by wind. Most commonly, we see this in maize. Now, in maize, children, there are two terms of importance, tassel and cob. Tassel means the cluster of male flowers, whereas cob means the female flowers. Now, what happens here, flowers are not really very attractive, they're colorless, inconspicuous, that means they can be hardly noticed, without fragrance, nectar, etc. And because they are wind pollinated, so naturally pollen grains have to be produced in large numbers, right? Sometimes in thousands and millions, and they have to be very light, dry, and sometimes winged, non-sticky, sometimes broad, or large stigmas, feathery, to trap them, right? So by and large, we can say yes, they are not attractive, and the pollen they produce in great many numbers and also very small in size, light in weight. Other features are the flowers. If you see over here, a better diagram to show you, this is a maize plant. You can see maize inflorescence tassel, which is usually at the top, and the female inflorescence or the cob is at the lateral side with the styles we call as silk, right? So in female flowers of maize, the stigmas and styles are branched and forming groups. They sway in wind to trap pollen grains, right? The male plants, they're forming tassels, and the female, they're forming cob. In certain cases, flowers are produced before appearance of leaves, and calyx and corolla are either reduced or absent. In plants like urtica, just now I told you, which burst suddenly to throw pollen grains, this is called as gunpowder mechanism. Alright, moving to the second characteristic of water pollinated flowers. Let me show you another picture of most commonly pollinated plant, Vallisneria. If you can see this is Vallisneria. Now, let us see what all things are very interesting in this plant. Vallisneria is a plant which is pollinated by water, and the flowers, as you can see, they are small, right? The plants are dioecious. Dioecious means the male flowers were here. You can see the male flowers are born on separate plant and female flowers are born on separate plants. The male flowers are small, look at them, right? And short stalked. The stalks are very small. Whereas female flowers, they're born solitary and they are having long stalks. The male flowers, they detach and mature after the maturity and keep floating till they meet the female flowers. And female flowers are very interestingly in their behavior. Once they are being pollinated, right, they will close their long stalk and curl back. Look at this. This will curl back in such a way that the further production of seeds and fruits will be inside the mud. Once again, the male flowers are here, short stalked, and after maturity they'll be detached, keep floating on the surface of water till they meet the female flower and the pollination is brought out. Once it is done, this long stalk of the female flower will curl back like a telephone wire and in such a way that the future seeds and fruits will be formed inside the mud, right? So this is a pollination which we can see is brought on the surface of water, right? Such a pollination is called as epihydrophily. Epi means it is on the surface of water. So let us see what are the characteristics of this type of flower. They will be small and inconspicuous, no bright color, nectar or odor, and unvetable perianth. Perianth means the undifferentiated calyx and corolla, right? And other floral and pollen grains, they will be unvetable. They are protected, the pollen grains are protected by a mucilaginous cover and the stigma are long and sticky. As I told you, epihydrophily is a type what I have discussed over here on the surface of the water.